Now let's finally move on to the macros. And because what we want is that while we want a completely general purpose program, which will not let us down when we're doing those complicated and prestigious projects, we also want the program to help us out when we're doing the very simple stuff, like beams and columns and slabs and walls and single footings and all that. So on the right-hand side, you see what we call container rebar macros. And the reason why we call them container rebar macros is because when you run them, they create lots of rebars, and each rebar is actually mostly created by the surface macro. So it leaves you with complete control, just like the surface macro does, even after you've executed the macro. So they're like macros which contain the surface macro inside them. So as you can see, we have one for single beam. We also have one for beams on an axis. So you have continuous beams, and then you can place all the reinforcement in them with a single command. For tie beams, for shear walls, which have these two areas at the ends, which are reinforced like hidden columns, and then the reinforcement in between. Normal wall reinforcements, closed wall reinforcements. For columns, polygonal columns. For slabs, these can be slabs with holes. When you have the holes, you can have your hole reinforcement around them. You can have regions right under the columns which need to be strengthened with extra reinforcement. So these are like region reinforcement macros. Single footings, point flares, stairs, corbels, and whatever. So these are the container macros which will get your work done even faster than manual detailing for the normal, most frequently found cases. Now, just to give you an idea about how they work, let's try the single footing macro, for example. So select that, select a single footing, right click to confirm, and then show it a direction for the main side. And the moment you do that, it creates whatever the defaults are for the single footing macro. And what you can do is you can select any one of those bars and press M once to go to the surface macro, but M twice to reach the actual container macro, and then press enter. And it will open up, and you can see there are lots of options inside for you can have top reinforcement, bottom reinforcement, you can have laser bars as well. But what I want to show you something is you can have your company standard set up for different types of situations. So here I have a 2 meter by 2 meter by 500 footing set up in my machine. I just load that. This is my company standard, and I say apply, and immediately my company standards are rolled out for that particular footing. Now, once we are happy with the single footing, what we need to do is we need to copy these rebars to the other footings. And while this case is very simple, we only have 2 rebars and we can select them very easily. But if you imagine a more complicated scenario in which a particular assembly has dozens of rebars and the neighboring assemblies also have their own rebars coming in, so selecting the rebars in this jungle over here might become difficult. So imagine you've got 25 rebars over here and another 50 coming in from other sides, from the tie beams and this and that. Actually, just selection could be a problem. So what we can do is we can select any rebar belonging to that assembly, right click, and say select same parent rebars. And immediately, whatever rebars there are which belong to that particular footing of the bar which we selected will be selected in a very, very conveniently. And once you have them, you can just right click and say copy to another object. Then you can select the source footing, and then you can select the target footings, and immediately your single footing or whatever it is that you're copying will be copied. Now let's move on to the column macro, for example. So I just select the macro and I say select the column, right click, and it asks for a foundation, which it might need to embed the starter bars. So I show it the foundation, right click, and the macro is run by defaults. All I need to do is just go inside the macro and see if I have any company standards set up. So I've got this one for similar columns. I just load that and press OK. And immediately my column is modified, or my column reinforcement is modified according to my company standards for that kind of a column. Now, this could be a situation where the selection I just talked about could become difficult. So you just select any bar belonging to the column, right click, say select the same parent rebars, and the entire column rebars are selected. Right click, say copy to object, show the column as a source column, and show the target columns and the other one. And your column reinforcement is created in front of your eyes. Now let's check the beams on an axis. So it could be a long axis. It doesn't need to be just 2 beams. It could be 3, 4, 5. They could be of different dimensions and different spans as well. All you need to do is just click on this one, select the first beam, right click to approve, select the second beam, right click to approve, nothing more to select, just right click again, and your beam on an axis macro will be created with your stirrup confinement regions, 3 different confinement regions and all that. And you can go inside and it will show you that you've chosen 2 beams. And for each individual beam, you can go to the data section and you will have complete control over the top reinforcement, bottom reinforcement, intermediate layered reinforcements, the stirrups, and basically the whole, I mean, everything you see on the screen, in the figures. You can even have different embedment details for each individual one. So basically, you have complete control over what you can do with the individual beams over here. Now, finally, for the container macros, because I don't have time to go through each one of them, but you do get the picture. Let me just quickly show you the shear wall macro, for example. You select the wall, you right click, there's no other wall to select. It asks for a starting surface, so I can show it this side surface. It then asks for an ending surface, I can show the other side. And then it asks for an inner surface, so I'm going to show it this inner surface. And the moment I do that, let me just look at it from the top. You can see that the container macro for shear wall has created a basic shear wall reinforcement very quickly. Obviously, these parameters are all modifiable, and we can open it up and we have the start area and the end cap start and the cap end, and we can have different parameters for each one of them and different longitudinal reinforcements and cross ties and this and that. So we've got a lot of detail over here. But the point of the container macros is to do very quickly whatever things are very commonly used in reinforced concrete detailing. But once again, at the end, I'll emphasize that you can always go back to your general detailing, and they're very fast as well. We're using the copies and the mirrors and mirror and rotate commands, etc. Using the handles, using the linear tapered, circular tapered, sectional commands. You just saw all that. But obviously, when you have your very standard beams and columns and walls and footings, then you can come back to these as well.